You're listening to Stimulus Tech Talk, a conversation-based podcast created by Stimulus Technologies that covers a range of topics related to business and technology.
Welcome to Stimulus Tech Talk. I'm Nathan Whittacre, CEO of Stimulus Technologies, and we're here with Justin Ware, the founder of Camcorder AI. Welcome, Justin.
Thanks, Nathan. Great to be here.
Yeah, so we're really excited to talk to Justin today. He's the founder, as I mentioned, of Camcorder AI, and I'd like to get his story and background on starting a company, building companies, especially around AI, and how we can incorporate it and get some ideas to incorporate AI inside of our businesses and/or launch a new business idea, depending on our industry surrounding AI. So. I guess let's start out. What's your story? What's the background of Camcorder AI and how'd you get started and why, I guess, is the bigger question.
Yeah, video is the through line. Video has been the through line throughout my entire career. I've been creating video for much longer than I like to admit. And, that took me from broadcast journalism to higher education to nonprofits to e-commerce to agencies throughout my career. So I was in video. And I've always had a passion for helping people increase their ability to use video for storytelling, right? To really scale up that content production and use visual and video storytelling. So this is really kind of the next iteration of that. Camcorder AI, it's a set of agentic workflow tools that just sit on top of the entire video editing process and do things like log footage for you, because that saves hours of time. Do things like create storyboards for you. Do things like reversion, revision for social media and different platforms. It's not, we're pretty squarely against the idea of completely replacing the humans in the process. Number one, we don't think that works right now. The technology is not there. Number two, consumers don't want that. Consumers want to hear from real people, right? I mean, I always kind of laugh when someone says they have generative UGC. I'm like, really? If it's generative UGC, it's not real. And if it's not real, then it's not really a user, then it's not UGC. So, for us, it's not about that. It's about taking AI and putting it in all the right places, right? I think there's been a meme that's gone around, where it said, I was hoping we'd be living in a world where the robots are doing my dishes so I can write poetry, not the robots are writing poetry so I can do the dishes. That's kind of how we feel about it too, right? So we're applying the robots to the editing process and all the ways that we don't want to be doing it. I've been doing video for most of my career, and I hate logging footage, right? Things like that are just tedious, boring tasks. So we wipe those out, we do them for you, so that you can really focus on doing more creative stuff and ultimately just creating a lot more video. So that's what Camcorder is all about: scaling up the ability to do really cool, creative video storytelling.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I think that's a lot of concerns that on two sides of the aisle is like, we certainly don't want, our jobs being replaced by AI. And that's certainly a concern, in the marketplace and with employees, is replacing their jobs. But on the other side of it, we want authenticity too of content and, tools like, HeyGen, which I'm sure is, kind of what you're talking about, those generative AI, video AI type systems, remove that authenticity. You can do mass amounts of content, but it removes the authenticity and the human element. So it's an interesting aspect to, kind of, I would imagine it's enhancing the work that somebody's already doing. And like you said, eliminating the tasks that you don't necessarily want to do, repetitive tasks that you don't want to do every day.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And I think it kind of is a disservice to the industry, like when it comes to creatives and advertising and other media organizations, to suggest that we should, strip out that authenticity, because there's just so many studies, and I'm never going to remember them off the top of my head, but very happy to share with anybody who wants to reach out, where consumers by and large are saying we want authenticity. We want real people, right? We want to hear from real people about products and how they experience them and what they would recommend. So I think, if we're going to really serve this industry, we need to be able to find ways, and AI can really help with this, but find ways to accelerate and enhance that real authentic video storytelling. I think that's kind of the name of the game for companies that are going to be really successful in this space, at least over the next few years.
So let's kind of go back a little bit in your life. You bought and sold a number of companies. What is, one key success driver you found as you've gone through this? What's something you've learned early on or something that you apply over and over again as you're forming a company or forming a new idea to help it be successful?
Yeah, I mean, this has been I mean, every time I think I've been part of a successful company, whether it's something I've launched or whether it's building something within a company that exists, it's listening to what the audience wants, right? I mean, entrepreneurs come with a dream and a vision, right? That's why they're doing what they do. But it's imperative that entrepreneurs are willing to adjust that dream and pivot that vision if what they're getting from the customers in the market is maybe a little different than what they originally envisioned. That's been very true for Camcorder AI over the past 6 to 12 months, right? We had an idea coming out where we're going to be just enterprise, enterprise, enterprise. We're going to do these massive engagements that can serve big brands and agencies, and that's going to be our focus. And then we recognize, well, okay, maybe not yet, because those big brands and agencies move a little slower, right? There are processes in place where adoption of AI tools might not be as swift as we had hoped. So then we started talking to smaller and mid-sized agencies and other creatives and individuals and solopreneurs. And we discovered that, oh, wow, just providing some tools like a deep video search library, which is, where you can just upload content, you don't have to log it. System logs it for you. You can call on whatever you want by just asking the platform to find a specific shot for you. Well, editors love that. That saves them a ton of time. So we've kind of sat back and said, okay, maybe this is more of like a subscription-based monthly model, and maybe we can make this accessible for a lot of people and go wide as opposed to going up in that enterprise space. And what's funny is we did that. We've got a lot of really good feedback. We've got some early customers who are using it and loving the platform. But now we're also starting to hear from some of those enterprise and larger agencies too, and what that might look like using some of these tools that we built for sort of the solo video editor so that they can spread that out across their organizations and realize some of the same efficiencies. None of that happens if we just would have stayed stubborn and said, no, we're going to build $500,000 a year contracts and that's it, right? We sold one last year that went really well. That was great. It's a big brand. But now we have a platform that is far more accessible for pretty much anybody who does video. So our ICP is much wider now. We've got customers who are using it and are really happy. We've got testimonials, and we've got a suite of tools that just work really well. So I think, for anybody in that, business building, entrepreneurial space, get something out there. Maybe it can be really simple, really short, that super MVP version 0.1, start getting feedback and listen to what people are asking for. And if it's different than what you expect, that's okay. That's probably a good thing, because then that means you're able to adjust and give the market what it needs, and that will allow you to grow.
And it's interesting, as I watch, things like Shark Tank or, even 30 years of business for us, you launch different products. And I think that's a very good um, lesson learned that we all need to understand as entrepreneurs is there's certainly a lot of ideas that we have. And, you're not an entrepreneur unless you have 1,000 ideas going on all the time, right? I think we're all have a bit of adult ADHD with ideas. But it's choosing ones that really are effective in the market. So I love that lesson.
Mhm.
So, as you're thinking about, camcorder AI, this authenticity, why does it matter so much in the business world today? There's sometimes it feels like, there's so much content out there, it's hard to tell what's authentic or not. Why do consumers want that authenticity?
I think you nailed it right there, because I think it is hard to tell. There is so much content, and I mean, look, it's not that these generative models aren't good; they're incredible, right? I mean, some of the things we can see them produce, from full motion, films, like live action films that are just incredible and almost indecipherable from the real thing, down to, the action figures we make using Chat GPT, which honestly is just a lot of fun. So it's really, really easy to create stuff that's not real, right? And there's probably a time and a place for that. And I mean, if we go back to like 1993, when Jurassic Park was generating dinosaurs, right? That was cool. It was a great application of computer animation. And, I think there's lots of places where that still makes sense. However, again, there's certain places like politics being a big one, right? Or, I think when you're talking about influencers and people you follow, and you want them to be real people, because that's the whole point. You're connecting with someone who actually, you can see yourself in them. And so I think because there's so much more of that. Like, right when it first came out, it was just kind of cool and neat, and everyone knew the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park weren't real and it wasn't a problem. But now it's hard to tell, and there's so many instances of people putting literally fake content out there that looks very real. And I think that has really caused a backlash, right? I think that's probably why as a society, by and large, we're saying, no, we got to pull back here. I want to know when things are real. I want to be clear when it's not real. And I want to be able to trust what I'm watching. And I do want to see some real people who actually do look like me, right? Because we always want to see ourselves in the media that we're consuming. So I think it's just that. I think it's not that like, generative content isn't good or fun to watch. It's the exact opposite. It's incredibly good. It's incredibly convincing. And that's a problem, because if something that is convincing that isn't true, that can create all kinds of problems across society. So I think that's probably a big reason why. I think the proliferation of it and the quality of it is actually the reason why people are having a problem with it.
So I think one of the things that's happening in the marketplace is this desire to, hyper localize or hyper focus on a specific audience. So, Sherry and I, my marketing manager, were just talking about this over this last week, is how do we, target our content and target our creation to, a specific avatar or specific target client profile. And the default that I would go to is say, well, what if we use generative AI to just recreate the maybe very similar content, but target it at a different avatar or different target client profile. And it's available out there to do it. We can do that with a lot of these tools. Is that what you're trying to do with Camcorder AI? Is really hyper target audiences and allow us in the marketing and as a company perspective to really give that personalized element.
Yes, absolutely. Right. And I think there's kind of stages to that, right? Now, number one, we want to focus on authentic content. So we want to use real content, real B-roll. Maybe you have 15 different hooks, and with the push of a button, you can swap those hooks out. So you have 15 different videos for 15 different audiences that react a little bit differently based on whatever performance metrics we have, right? Then there's also where you can use a touch of AI, right? Where you have a real person doing a real thing, and maybe you just change the last word, or it's kind of like with Adobe where you can just kind of extend a clip a little bit. That's where you kind of have this sort of blended space in between authentic and AI. It's still mostly real, still a real person, still that person doing that thing. It's not misrepresenting them at all, but it is maybe just using it to enhance the story a little bit. So there are lots of ways where you don't have to lean full into generative, and you can use real people, authentic content, but use AI to accelerate and scale up that content. And that's a big part of our vision. We that's our storyboard tool that we just launched this week, where you can put a script in and it will generate that video for you in a matter of seconds. Then you can take another script, put it in, and it will generate a similar video, but again, it might have different actors or in a different place, right? Maybe some are going to be in like a Mountain West background, where others will be in New York City, right? And it's just a matter of same script, but just different direction, right? And if you just put those different scripts in, in a matter of seconds, you have two different videos. So personalization obviously is important. And if you can actually do personalization with authentic content, I think that's where it starts to get really powerful.
Interesting. One of the things that just this week, I was talking to a colleague of mine that runs another business. He's not a tech guy. And he had this idea a few years ago about integrating his internal line of business application with his CRM. And there was just no connection in between. And it was, a big project to connect the two of them that he would have had to hire a programmer for. And he decided, what if I try to use ChatGPT to help write this custom software? And amazingly, he was able to get it connected together without being technical. And I think that's one of the things that AI is doing for us, is allowing somebody maybe not with the technical skills to produce great content. And it sounds like that's what you're doing with Camcorder AI, is maybe somebody that isn't a video editor, or, not, maybe just a solo entrepreneur, single business, can generate great content on their own.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's still that human element where the story needs to come together, right? And that storytelling piece. So, for example, that script, you still need to put a script into our platform with some direction, right? Now, we can automate more of that as we move on. You could probably automate scripts with ChatGPT, right? So you can pull different tools in. I think what it more does is it really enhances, I think you said the last part, there's a latter part where like an individual video editor, like a freelancer who can only do so much, uh, they can now take a tool like this and they can triple or quadruple their output, which is huge from a revenue standpoint. And that can scale up then if you're in an agency and you've got a team of 6 creatives, right? And they're not spending as much time logging footage or creating first drafts or making cuts for social media, right? Then you can again exponentially expand the output of that team, right? And I think at some point maybe you get to a stage where especially in the video space, that again the creatives are not as necessary. But I just don't see that happening anytime soon. I think what this really does is if you are a creative person, it scales up your ability to do much more.
I guess, going back to the business side of things, one of the things you mentioned at the beginning was, you were going down a different direction with the company, and then you realized, there's better possibility in listening to the marketplace of, scaling down the type of client that you wanted to go with. So, now that you're growing, and you have clients and you're onboarding people, how do you stop a company from stalling out? How do you accelerate growth? And all of us in business want to, have exponential growth in our business. We don't want to just, have linear growth or kind of plateaued growth. What have you seen in your time as a owner of, accelerating growth over time?
That's a great question. Um, I think it probably comes back to sort of having a North Star and a vision and a mission behind that vision. Like, again, we've really, as a company, we've adopted this. We want to be AI enhanced authentic video production, right? That's kind of a niche space, a little oxymoronish, right? Like AI, authentic, it kind of plays together well. So I guess makes for a good tagline. Um, I think if you're able to stay true to that, I think that's really helpful in growing, because it also kind of gives you a sort of a template to evaluate things against and say, should we do this or should we do this? We've got resources to do one or the other. Which one of them kind of matches with our North Star? So I do think, I think that's been I look back at some of the other success that we've had and other times where we haven't been as successful. And I think as soon as you sort of stray away from, again, not like a product vision, because that's something that should adjust based on client feedback, but like who you are as a person and how that translates across the brand and the company that you're building as founders. As I think about it in this moment right now, looking back in different instances, when you start to stray from that initial vision or mission, um, and then why you did it in the first place and why you're trying to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish, so that's where things can go awry. So I would just say, understand who you are, be true to that. This is kind of just, this is not concrete stuff. It's kind of, sort of ethereal type thinking. But I think that, that is, at least in my experience, that's been the case, where if you stay true to who you are and your vision, and why you're doing what you're doing, and apply that as a template when you're evaluating new directions and trying to grow, that can be, I mean, a case in point here, and this is just kind of like a tagline, but again, like Southwest Airlines, the way it was able to grow is they had a CEO who said, look, we are going to be the low cost airline. Everything we do has to be evaluated against that. Everything has to be, when customers think of Southwest, they know they're getting a bargain, they're getting a value. And any business decision we make, if it runs astray of that, it doesn't happen, right? Well, Southwest took off and grew to be an enormous airline. I think they're one of the largest carriers in the world, or at least in the country right now, and have been for a while. So I think that's a case in point where, and that's not even like a sort of a who I am type thing, but it's sort of a business statement saying this is who we're going to be, and then sticking to that, and then allowing that to be your catalyst for growth.
Essential to think about is, having that as a business owner, having that strategic vision long term that you're moving towards, and the products and services that you have around it may change over time. I really like that what you said is that product vision may change, but the company should stay set on that direction. And you might have to adjust to the marketplace, by product, but stay true to yourself. And if you're going to be successful, I think that authenticity, even as a business and as a business owner for yourself, has to stay true. So
For
that's
sure.
great. And kind of going back to the video side of things, what are you seeing? You've been in video for a long time. Thinking about the best ways that a business owner can use video today to communicate with their clients and to communicate with prospects. What are some of the best ways that you're seeing that be successful today?
I mean, the first thing I would do is talk to the people who are using your products, right? Get those customer testimonials out in a real and authentic way. I think no matter what it is you're selling or doing, I think, talking to the people who are impacted by your services, like if you're like a nonprofit organization who are buying your products, if you're a CPG or whatever it may be, you know, that's what people look to. That's why we go to Google and look at reviews, right? We want to hear real reactions from real people. And I think the more you can highlight the voices of those who are using your products and are happy about those products, it's been a big part of our features launch this week, getting some of those voices out into the space. And we'll keep doing that with some of our early customers and partners. So I think that's really important. I think the other thing is, I love it whenever I see a window into an organization, from like startup DTC brands to major companies. If you can get your founders or co-founders or CEOs or presidents in front of a camera, especially if they're dynamic, really helping people see into the day-to-day life of your company or organization, all the gears and how they turn and how that brings that product to your kitchen counter or whatever it may be. I think those two things, right? I think number one, who are your biggest fans? Give them a megaphone. Let them scream it from the hilltops about why they love you. That's a never fail. It's always been effective, I think. And then the second thing is, video allows you to open a window into places that people can't see on a regular basis. So maybe it's on the assembly line. Maybe you're talking to a shift manager who just loves what they do and loves being part of, building this product for people. Maybe it's the CEO and they've got something to talk about. But I think, you know, showing people what they can't see, the behind the scenes. People love behind the scenes and they love hearing testimonials from people who look and feel just like them. So those would be the two things I would focus on first.
I This is a personal question, I guess. I'm an introvert, and I don't consider myself dynamic, but I'm on camera right now with you. So, I mean, you've been in video for a long time. How do for a CEO like myself that is not necessarily comfortable in front of a camera, how do you convince, a business owner or CEO or a leader, uh, that video is essential to their brand, and you know that that their voice matters, I guess is
Yeah, great question. Nathan, obviously you do have a talent for it because here you are, you're doing a great job, you're interviewing, you do this, for a living. But you are going to get to some places where, a leader brings other things to the company, and being that face of the company is not the right thing for them. So number one, I really wouldn't force it. I would look to more customer testimonials, or maybe who on your team could be that, vocal person who is the face of the camera. Maybe it's a vice president or a director level or someone in marketing or whatever, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be the CEO. But I would also encourage leadership to kind of let go of some of the hesitation around it and recognize that even if you are a little uncomfortable and maybe not the most dynamic person, that can be a good thing because that feels real. It feels authentic. And if we have audiences that are craving authenticity more than ever, being vulnerable, in front of a group of people and being vulnerable in front of the camera, I think there's some real value to that. Uh, so yeah, like I said, number one, I really wouldn't force. Someone is genuinely uncomfortable and they really desperately don't want to do something. Let them focus on the things that they do well, right? But for most people, I think they would be surprised if they just really talked about their vision from the heart, why they're doing what they're doing, and giving people a window into that day to day for them. I think they would be successful. So and then it's a matter of doing it some more, and being okay with throwing away 90% of it and keeping the 10% that's good. Trial and error, experiment with it if you're willing to give it a shot.
I think that's the hard part is you see these very polished finished products, and you expect that everything that is put on camera is always polished and a finished product. But I don't think we realize that how much content is out there. Probably, like you said, 90% of it is probably not great. And, they produce the 10% polish that we're seeing. And, it just takes doing it over and over again to get to a point that you feel comfortable enough to do it. And that's the way it's been for me. Certainly have to have to do it again and again. And it's not perfect the first time for sure.
Yeah, it's a golf swing. I mean, the more you do it, the better you're going to get. And maybe you'll have a few days where you're slicing more than you're driving it straight. But, that's why you keep getting back out there and giving it another shot. But definitely, the more you do of this, any person is going to become more comfortable, more natural, and more effective at it.
So if somebody wanted to get started with Camcorder AI, and who's your target market? Who are you looking for? You mentioned the video production agencies or marketing agencies. Is it all the way down to a single entrepreneur, or are your targets more the agency side of it?
Yeah, I mean, we have all of the above, right? Because we have a $50 per month option where you can do a lot of stuff with up to 500 gigabytes of storage and whatnot. So, and if you think about the time it takes, and if you're a videographer who charges $50 or $75 per hour, and you can save 8 hours on a project because the platform logs it for you, math is simple there. If you're paying $50 a month, I think anyone who has a high volume of creative, right? They need to do a lot of output. They want to work with real video, create a lot of content. So agencies are the obvious slam dunk. Like, they are going to save so much time and money with this platform. Same with brands. Brands do a lot of in-house production. We have brands who are using it, and sometimes they're using it internally. Sometimes they're using it in collaboration with the agencies they're working with, because it's a cloud-based platform. So it's really easy to, collaborate with people across the platform. So yeah, I would think, I mean, any brand, any agency, any size that produces a lot of video content, this is a great tool. Any news media organizations. I come from broadcast news. I know how much time it took to log that footage every day. You can free your reporters up to do so much more if they're not spending 1, 2, 3 hours a day logging footage. So just any organization that has a high output of video content and wants to scale that content up and get more out of their human resources, Camcorder AI is great for them.
And how do they get in contact with the company or with you if they want to get started?
Yeah, well, I'm Justin at camcorder.ai. You can find me on LinkedIn. Camcorder.ai is the website, so you can sign up from the website. We've got our monthly pricing plans there for the number of terabyte of storage you want to use, the number of users you want to have on the platform. And then again, if you are a larger organization and you want more of a sort of bulk discount, we can do custom enterprise engagements for them as well.
Excellent. Well, it's definitely very interesting, and I think it's timely in everything we're doing today. How do we incorporate AI into the work that we're doing? How to still be authentic in the work that we're doing? And it sounds like you're giving a tool to people to merge both of them together to be more productive and have that authenticity. So thanks, Justin, for joining us today. It was a very interesting conversation, and I really appreciate your time.
I appreciate being here. Thank you so much, Nathan.
Thanks for listening to Stimulus Tech Talk. Join us each week as we talk about technology and how to use it to improve your businesses. Have a great day, everybody.